If something is breaking in your life right now, don't panic. You're not losing everything. You're finally breaking free. Something in your life is starting to give way, and you can feel it, even if you can't fully explain it yet. It's not loud. It's not obvious. From the outside, everything might still look the same, but inside, something is shifting. The things that once felt secure are beginning to feel uncertain. The patterns you used to follow without thinking now feel heavy. The places you used to find comfort no longer bring the same peace. And it's unsettling because part of you wants things to stay stable. Part of you wants to hold everything together, to keep life predictable, to keep control over what happens next. But at the same time, there's another part of you that knows something deeper is happening. It feels like pressure. It feels like tension. It feels like something is being pulled apart in your life, and your first instinct might be to fix it, to restore what's breaking, to go back to what felt easier, to rebuild what is starting to fall apart. But slow down for a moment and listen carefully. Not everything that breaks is meant to be repaired. There are things in your life that were never meant to last forever. Things that held you in place, limited your growth, shaped your identity in ways that were never aligned with who God created you to be. And as long as those things remained untouched, they quietly defined your direction. But the moment God begins to take his rightful place in your life, everything built outside of him begins to lose its foundation. That's why it feels like this. That's why the tension is there. Because God doesn't just add himself into your life to coexist with everything else. He transforms it. He realigns it. He removes what cannot stand in his presence. And that process involves breaking the habits that kept you comfortable but stuck, breaking the thoughts that convinced you to stay small, breaking the attachments that pulled you away from your purpose, breaking the invisible chains you learned to live with. And when those things begin to break, it doesn't always feel like freedom at first. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like everything is being shaken at the same time. But this is not your life falling apart. This is what it looks like when God begins to set you free. So if you feel the pressure, if you sense the shift, if you can tell that something in your life is no longer holding together the way it used to, don't rush to fix it, because you might be standing in the exact moment where everything that has been holding you back is finally starting to break. Number 1. The moment you truly put God first. There comes a point in your life when following God is no longer something you say. It becomes something you choose, not casually, not when it's convenient, not only when things go wrong, but completely. A moment where you stop dividing your life into parts, giving God a little, while holding everything else for yourself. Because the truth is, as long as God is not first, something else will always take his place. Your fears will take that place. Your desires will take that place. Your need for control will take that place. Your past will take that place. And whatever sits in that position will always shape your decisions. That's how chains begin. Not because you intended to be trapped, but because you allowed something else to lead. But then something inside you shifts. You begin to see the pattern, the repetition, the same cycles playing out again and again, and you get tired of knowing there's more, but not stepping into it, tired of feeling stuck without understanding why, tired of living a life that looks stable, but doesn't feel right. And in that moment, you make a different decision. You stop asking, what do I want right now? And you begin asking, what does God want from my life? And that shift changes everything. Because the moment you truly put God first, your life begins to align with something greater than your feelings. And alignment always brings exposure. Things that don't belong begin to surface. Choices that once felt normal begin to feel wrong. Paths that once seemed right begin to feel empty, and it can feel uncomfortable because you're not just changing direction, you're changing authority. You are no longer led by what you feel. You are led by what is true, and that shift breaks something. It breaks the influence of your old patterns. It breaks the control of what once defined you. It breaks the hold of what kept repeating in your life, not because you forced it, but because you changed who sits first in your life. And when God becomes first, everything else must fall into its proper place, or it begins to fall apart. Number 2. What has been holding you until now? Not everything that holds you looks like a chain. In fact, most of the things that limit your life feel completely normal. They feel like priwichki you've had for years, thoughts you've accepted without question, reactions that seem automatic. But underneath all of it, there is something shaping your life, something influencing your decisions, something guiding how you respond, something quietly defining your limits. Chains are not always loud. They are built slowly, one compromise at a time, one lie at a time, one moment of fear that you chose to believe. And over time, those moments become patterns. Patterns become strongholds, and strongholds begin to feel like identity. You start to believe, this is just who I am. I've always been this way. I can't change this. This is just my life. But that's not truth. That's a chain speaking, because anything that limits who God created you to be did not come from Him. Fear that stops you from moving forward, guilt that keeps you tied to your past, habits that pull you back every time you try to grow. These are not random struggles. They are spiritual chains, and they exist for one purpose: to keep you from becoming who God is calling you to be. The enemy doesn't always need to destroy you. If he can keep you distracted, comfortable, stuck in familiar patterns, he can keep you from ever stepping into your purpose. And the most dangerous chains are the ones you don't question, the ones you've learned to live with, the ones that feel normal because you don't fight what you believe is part of you. But the moment you put God first, light begins to enter places you've never looked at before. And suddenly, you begin to see clearly. You begin to recognize what has been holding you. You begin to feel resistance in areas you once ignored. And that's where everything begins. Because before a chain can break, it has to be revealed. Number 3. What begins to break when God takes first place? The moment God truly becomes first in your life, something shifts that you cannot see, but you will feel. Not always in your surroundings right away, not always in obvious ways, but in the unseen. Everything begins to realign, because when you put God first, you step into agreement with Him, and agreement carries authority. You are no longer being led by what you feel. You are no longer guided by your past. You are no longer responding from fear. You are aligning with truth. And the moment truth enters, everything built on something else begins to shake. Things that once worked stop working. Paths that once felt easy become blocked. Doors that once opened without resistance begin to close. And at first, it can feel confusing. It can feel like you're being held back. But God is not holding you back. He is redirecting you. He is removing what cannot go with you into what He has prepared. Because not everything that was part of your life is meant to be part of your future. And at the same time, something else begins to happen inside of you. Your awareness begins to grow. You start to notice things you ignored before. You begin to discern what once felt normal. You feel conviction where you once felt nothing. This is not pressure to overwhelm you. This is clarity to guide you. Because the closer you move toward God, the less comfortable you become with anything that pulls you away from Him. And that's where the breaking intensifies. Because now, you're not just living differently, you're seeing differently. And once you see clearly, you cannot go back to being blind. That's why this process feels so deep. Because God is not just changing your life on the outside, He is transforming you from within. Number 4. Why the breaking feels painful at first. If breaking free were easy, you would have been free a long time ago. But the truth is, what has been holding you has been connected to you for a long time. Some things are tied to your habits. Some are tied to your identity. Some are tied to people you've known for years. So when God begins to break those things, it doesn't always feel like relief at first. Sometimes it feels like loss. Things you once depended on begin to disappear. People you felt close to begin to distance. Environments that once felt familiar no longer feel right. And in those moments, it's easy to think something is wrong. It's easy to feel like everything is being pulled apart without understanding why. But what you are experiencing is not destruction. It is separation. God is separating you from what cannot go with you into the life He has prepared. And separation is never comfortable, because even unhealthy attachments can feel familiar. Even wrong environments can feel safe. But God is not trying to keep you comfortable. He is trying to set you free. And freedom requires breaking the emotional ties that kept you connected to the wrong things, breaking the patterns that kept pulling you backward, breaking the version of yourself that was built on survival instead of purpose. And yes, it hurts, because growth always stretches you beyond what feels normal. But don't let the pain confuse you. Pain does not always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it means something is being removed that was never meant to stay. And if you can stay in that process, if you don't run back to what feels familiar, you will begin to see it clearly. What felt like loss was actually release. What felt like breaking was actually the beginning of your freedom. Number 5. The resistance that comes when chains begin to break. The moment things begin to break in your life, resistance will rise. Not randomly, not without reason, but because something that once had influence over you is starting to lose it. The enemy does not stay passive when you begin to move toward freedom, because breaking chains means losing control. And the enemy only has influence where there is agreement, where there is fear, where there are patterns he can continue to use. So when you put God first, and those patterns begin to break, he responds. Sometimes it comes quietly, through distraction, sudden busyness, thoughts that pull your focus away from what matters. Other times, it comes as doubt. Questions begin to rise in your mind. Is this really worth it? Am I doing the right thing? Why does this feel harder now instead of easier? And if that's not enough, pressure increases. Situations feel heavier. Temptations feel stronger. Old habits try to pull you back into what is familiar. And in those moments, it's easy to misunderstand what is happening. It's easy to think you're going backward, but you're not. This is not regression. This is resistance. Because the enemy does not fight what already belongs to him. He fights what he is losing. And right now, he is losing his hold on you. That's why the pressure feels stronger. That's why the battle feels more intense. Because you are no longer standing still. You are moving, and movement always creates resistance. But here's what changes everything. You don't fight this battle the way you used to. You don't rely on your own strength. You don't react out of fear. You don't fall back into old patterns. You stand. You stay aligned with God. You stay rooted in truth. You stay consistent even when it feels difficult. And the more you do that, the weaker that resistance becomes, because what once had access to your life no longer has the same control. And eventually, what tried to hold you loses its grip completely. Number 6. The power of obedience and daily alignment. Freedom is not just a moment, it is a lifestyle, because even after chains begin to break, you still have to choose, every single day, who you will follow. Putting God first is not a one-time decision. It is a daily alignment, a daily choice to listen, a daily choice to trust, a daily choice to obey. And obedience is where your freedom grows stronger, not because it is always easy, but because it keeps you connected to truth. There will be moments when God asks you to let go of something you still want to hold, moments where he leads you in a direction that does not make immediate sense, moments where obedience feels uncomfortable, even costly. But every time you choose to follow him, something inside of you changes. Your spirit becomes clearer. Your discernment becomes sharper. Your peace becomes deeper. And what once controlled you continues to lose its influence. Because obedience breaks agreement with your old life. It separates you from the patterns that once defined you, and it anchors you in something unshakable. This is how freedom becomes stable, not just something you experience once, but something you walk in consistently, day by day, decision by decision. And over time, you begin to realize something powerful. You are no longer fighting to stay free. You are living from a place of freedom. Because when God is first, your life is no longer led by pressure, but by purpose. Number 7. When everything starts falling into place, there comes a moment, not all at once, but gradually, when you begin to notice something different. The chaos that once surrounded you no longer feels the same. The confusion that once controlled you starts to fade. And even though life is still moving, there is a new sense of clarity. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is aligning. You begin to see things differently. What once felt urgent no longer has power over you. What once distracted you no longer pulls you in the same way. And what once seemed impossible now feels within reach. Because when you put God first, He doesn't just remove things, He replaces them with direction, with purpose, with the right connections. You begin to walk into moments that feel intentional, conversations that come at the right time, opportunities that match where you are now, doors that open without force. And you realize you're no longer trying to control everything, you're being led. And that changes everything. Because instead of chasing, you're receiving. Instead of forcing, you're flowing. Instead of questioning every step, you're trusting the direction. And this is where peace becomes real, not temporary, not dependent on circumstances, but steady, because your life is no longer built on what you can control. It's built on who is leading you. And when God leads, everything finds its place. Not always how you imagined, but exactly how it needs to be. Conclusion. This is not the end. This is your freedom beginning. So if you feel like things are breaking in your life right now, don't be afraid. Because this is what happens when you truly put God first. Things don't stay the same. They can't. Chains begin to fall. Old patterns lose their power. Attachments that once defined you start to disappear. And yes, it can feel intense. It can feel like everything is shifting at once. But what you're experiencing is not your life falling apart. It's your life being rebuilt on something real. God is not removing things to leave you empty. He is removing what was holding you, so you can finally step into freedom. So don't run back to what feels familiar. Don't try to rebuild what God is breaking. And don't doubt the process just because it feels uncomfortable, because what's breaking right now was never meant to stay, and what God is doing in your life is only just beginning. So stay where you are, stay aligned, stay faithful, because the moment you put God first, chains don't just loosen, they break. And once they break, you will never be the same again.